The emergency alert screaming through Commander Vek's headset had exactly 3 words. Pack discipline failing. In his 27 cycles of military service, through 15 major campaigns and countless tactical nightmares, he had never received a report that made less sense. Keltharian pack discipline didn't fail. It was as reliable as gravity, as predictable as stellar mechanics, and as unchangeable as the laws of physics. Until, apparently, a human female named Jade Morrison had walked into their camp 4 hours ago and decided to rearrange reality. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Rix, his voice carrying that particular strain that suggested impending mental collapse. "Sergeant Thane has abandoned his position in the eastern perimeter to assist the human with her evening meal preparation." Vek's claws extended involuntarily, scoring deep gouges in his command chair's armrests. "Assist her with what, exactly?" "She appears to be cooking something called soup, sir. Sergeant Thane is currently gathering what she describes as herbs and spices from the surrounding vegetation." Sergeant Thane. The same Sergeant Thane who once executed a subordinate for breaking formation during a firefight? "Yes, sir. That's Sergeant Thane." Through his command post's viewing portal, Vek could see the impossible scene unfolding in their temporary camp. Jade Morrison, their human prisoner, though she seemed blissfully unaware of her captive status, was indeed cooking something over a makeshift fire, while his most disciplined non-commissioned officer hovered nearby like an eager cub seeking approval. "This is precisely what the intelligence briefings warned us about," Vek muttered, consulting his datapad for the 17th time in the past hour. "Humans are pack breakers, individuality spreaders, social structure destroyers." "Sir, with respect," Rix ventured, "she doesn't appear to be breaking anything. If anything, she seems to be." "Seems to be what, Lieutenant?" "Building something new, sir." Vek's secondary stomachs clenched with the kind of dread typically reserved for facing superior enemy forces without adequate ammunition. The Keltharian pack structure had evolved over millions of years, perfected through countless generations of survival-based natural selection. It was efficient, logical, and utterly reliable. Until now. "Status report on the rest of the pack," he ordered, though he suspected the answer would give him indigestion that lasted for weeks. "Private Zoll has requested permission to assist with firewood collection. Corporal Nex is teaching the human basic Keltharian vocabulary. And—" Rix paused, consulting his notes with obvious reluctance. "Private Yak has apparently volunteered to stand guard duty for her while she sleeps tonight." Private Yak volunteered for guard duty. Private Yak, who considers additional responsibilities to be a form of cosmic punishment inflicted by malevolent deities. "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yak. Yak. Yak." He seemed quite enthusiastic about it. Vek rose from his command chair and stalked to the viewing portal, his predatory instincts demanding that he observe this threat directly. What he saw defied every principle of military organization he had learned in 3 decades of service. Jade Morrison was sitting cross-legged beside her cooking fire, apparently telling some kind of story to an audience that included 4 of his most battle-hardened soldiers. They were listening with the rapt attention typically reserved for tactical briefings that meant the difference between life and death. "What is she saying?" Vek demanded. Rix activated the audio pickups, filling the command post with Jade's voice. Her words were translated into Keltharian by their communication systems, but something in her tone seemed to transcend the mechanical interpretation. "So there I was, hanging upside down from a tree branch, covered in mud, with absolutely no idea how I was going to explain this to my commanding officer. But, sometimes, you have to admit that dignity is less important than getting the job done." The soldiers listening to her story made sounds that Vek's translator interpreted as amused appreciation and sympathetic understanding. Sergeant Thane, veteran of 17 combat deployments, was actually chuckling at a human's account of military incompetence. "She's weaponizing humor," Vek realized with growing horror. "She's using entertainment to bypass pack loyalty structures." "Sir, I don't think she's trying to bypass anything," Rix observed. "She seems to be including everyone in whatever social structure she's creating." That's even worse. She's replacing our hierarchical chain of command with some kind of egalitarian group dynamic. Through the audio feed, they could hear Jade addressing Sergeant Thane directly. Thank you so much for finding these herbs, Sergeant. This soup is going to taste amazing because of your help. Sergeant Thane, the same Sergeant Thane who had never accepted praise gracefully in his entire military career, practically glowed with satisfaction at her words. She's praising him for foraging, Vex said weakly. He's a decorated combat veteran, and she's praising him for gathering plants like a new recruit on basic survival training. And he likes it, sir. That was the truly terrifying part. Sergeant Thane wasn't just tolerating Jade's praise, he was visibly pleased by it. His ears were forward, his tail was relaxed, and his posture showed none of the tension that typically characterized his interactions with authority figures. Sir, Lieutenant Rix continued, consulting his field reports with growing bewilderment. There's more. Private Kex abandoned his scheduled equipment maintenance to help the human construct what she calls a proper seating area, using gathered stones and logs. He's been working on it for over an hour. Private Kex. The same Private Kex who considers any deviation from standard protocol to be a personal affront to military tradition. Yes, sir. He's also been asking her questions about human furniture design and expressing genuine interest in her explanations about comfort versus functionality. Vex claws clicked against his command console in patterns that spelled out ancient Keltharian curses. What else? Corporal Hex has volunteered to share his personal water purification tablets with the human because he noticed she was using untreated water for cooking. Lance Corporal Dex offered her his spare uniform jacket when he observed her shivering during evening temperature drops. And Rix paused, clearly struggling with the next item on his list. And what, Lieutenant? Private Pex has apparently asked her to teach him some human songs because, and I quote, they sound more cheerful than our traditional war chants. The silence that followed this report was so complete that Vec could hear his own circulatory system working overtime to process the implications. Private Pex was their communications specialist, trained in psychological warfare techniques that included using traditional Keltharian battle songs to intimidate enemies. He was now requesting entertainment instruction from their prisoner. Sir, there's something else you should see, Rick said quietly, activating another viewing screen. The display showed the camp's perimeter, where their normally rigid patrol rotations had been modified to accommodate what could only be described as social visiting opportunities. Guards were extending their shifts voluntarily so they could spend time near Jade's cooking area, and off-duty personnel were finding excuses to pass through the central camp zone during their rest periods. They're reorganizing the duty roster, Vec observed with growing alarm, to maximize social interaction opportunities with the human. Yes, sir. And they're doing it without orders, without discussion, and without any apparent awareness that they're violating established protocol. Through the audio feed, they could hear Jade asking Sergeant Thane about Keltharian dietary preferences and expressing genuine curiosity about their nutritional requirements. She was treating military intelligence gathering like friendly conversation, and his soldiers were responding with information that should have been classified as operationally sensitive. She's conducting espionage through casual small talk, Vec realized. And my pack is volunteering strategic information because they want to be helpful. Sir, I don't think she realizes she's gathering intelligence. She seems genuinely interested in making sure the soup meets everyone's dietary needs. That was somehow even more disturbing. Jade Morrison was accidentally extracting classified information through the simple expedient of caring about their welfare and asking thoughtful questions about their biological requirements. What does this mean for our operational security? Vec asked, though he suspected the answer would require a complete revision of military doctrine. Sir, if she can convince our most disciplined soldiers to abandon protocol through kindness and shared meals, I think we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about information security, unit cohesion, and human psychological capabilities. Vex stared at the screens showing his elite military unit transforming into something that looked more like an extended family gathering than a reconnaissance mission. The implications were staggering, not just for their current operation, but for everything Keltharian military strategists believed about human nature and pack dynamics. Came another voice from the communication station. "We're receiving reports from the perimeter patrols. Let me guess," Vex said with the resignation of someone watching natural laws restructure themselves in real time. "They want to know if they can visit the humans' cooking fire during their break periods." "Actually, sir, they're requesting permission to bring her gifts. Private Rex found some interesting flowers he thinks she might like. And Corporal Dex wants to offer her his emergency water rations because he noticed she seemed thirsty earlier." Vex's claws retracted and extended several times in rapid succession, a nervous habit he had developed during particularly stressful situations. His pack was voluntarily redistributing resources to benefit a supposed enemy, abandoning established protocol for the comfort of an outsider, and apparently finding joy in activities that had nothing to do with their military objectives. "What does the tactical manual say about this kind of scenario?" he asked desperately. Rix consulted his datapad with the thoroughness of someone hoping to find salvation in official documentation. "Sir, there is no tactical manual scenario that covers pack members voluntarily reorganizing themselves around a prisoner who doesn't appear to realize she's been captured." "Of course there isn't. Because this situation shouldn't be possible." But it was happening, regardless of theoretical impossibility. Through the viewing portal, Vec watched Jade serve bowls of her improvised soup to his soldiers, each of whom received their portion with expressions of genuine gratitude. She had somehow transformed mealtime from a functional necessity into a social event that his pack members were actually enjoying. "Sir, we should probably discuss the larger implications," Rick said carefully. "If the human can disrupt pack formation this quickly and effectively, our mission parameters may need to be reconsidered." The mission. Vec had almost forgotten about their actual objectives in the face of watching his military unit transform into something resembling a social club. They were supposed to be conducting reconnaissance on human settlement patterns, gathering intelligence on their defensive capabilities, and assessing potential threats to Keltharian territorial expansion. Instead, they were, apparently, learning soup recipes and volunteering for extra guard duty. "Has anyone briefed the human on our mission objectives?" Vec asked, though he suspected the answer would be another reality-defying impossibility. "No, sir. She seems to think we're a research expedition studying local flora and fauna. She's been very helpful, actually, pointing out edible plants and warning us about poisonous varieties. She's helping us with botanical identification while we conduct military intelligence gathering. Yes, sir. She seems genuinely concerned about our safety and well-being." Vec stared at his lieutenant, trying to process the concept of an enemy combatant who was worried about their welfare. It violated every principle of strategic thinking he had ever learned. "Sir," came yet another report from the communication station. "Private Lox is requesting permission to share his sleeping gear with the human. He noticed she doesn't have adequate insulation for the night temperatures. Private Lox wants to give away his military equipment to ensure a prisoner's comfort." "Yes, sir." He seemed quite concerned about the possibility of her getting cold. Through the audio feed, they could hear Jade organizing cleanup duties with the same casual efficiency she had brought to cooking. But instead of issuing orders or establishing hierarchies, she was asking for volunteers and expressing gratitude for every contribution. "All right, everyone. Let's get this area tidied up before we settle in for the night. Sergeant Thane, would you mind helping me clean these bowls? And Corporal Nex, if you could bank the fire for safety, that would be wonderful. Thank you all so much for making dinner such a pleasant experience." The soldiers responded with enthusiasm that Vec had never heard directed toward routine camp maintenance. They were competing to see who could be most helpful. Not because they had been ordered to, but because they wanted to earn Jade's approval and gratitude. She's turned chore distribution into a privilege system, Vec realized. "My soldiers are fighting for the right to do extra work, and they're happy about it, sir." That was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire situation. His pack wasn't just following Jade's suggestions, they were genuinely pleased to be included in her activities. The rigid military discipline that had defined their social structure was being replaced by something that looked suspiciously like friendship. Sir, Rick said quietly, I think we need to consider the possibility that our understanding of human social dynamics may be fundamentally flawed. How so? The intelligence report suggested that humans would disrupt pack cohesion through individualistic behavior that undermines group loyalty. But that's not what we're observing. Then what are we observing? She's not breaking our pack structure, sir. She's improving it. My soldiers are more cooperative, more willing to help each other, and more invested in group success than they've ever been. Vec watched through the viewing portal as Jade settled down for the night, surrounded by his soldiers who had volunteered for guard duty not because they had been ordered to, but because they wanted to ensure her safety. The sight should have filled him with tactical concern about compromised security protocols. Instead, he found himself wondering if there might be room around that fire for one more. Sir! The communication operator's voice cracked with panic. We're receiving emergency transmissions from reconnaissance units in sectors 7, 12, and 15. All report similar pack discipline breakdowns. Vec's stomach dropped into regions typically reserved for existential dread. Similar how? Human contact resulting in voluntary cooperation, sir. Unit leaders are requesting immediate guidance on managing soldiers who insist on sharing resources and reorganizing duty schedules for optimal social interaction. How many units are affected? All of them, sir. Every reconnaissance team assigned to human settlements is reporting identical phenomena. Lieutenant Rix's ears flattened completely against his skull. Sir, this isn't an isolated incident. This is a species-wide human capability we never identified. Through their observation screens, Vec watched Jade finish distributing evening meals and begin what she cheerfully called story time. His soldiers had arranged themselves in an informal circle, their weapons set aside, their postures relaxed in ways that violated approximately 17 different tactical protocols. What kind of stories is she telling them? Vec asked, though he suspected the answer would require him to revise fundamental assumptions about information warfare. Personal anecdotes about human civilian life, sir. She's describing something called community potluck dinners, where neighbors voluntarily share food and socialize without hierarchical structure. She's teaching them alternative social organization models. And they're fascinated by the concept, sir. The communication console erupted with another priority signal. Sir, urgent transmission from High Command. General Krath wants immediate tactical assessment of human psychological warfare capabilities. Vec accepted the transmission, and General Krath's intimidating visage filled the primary screen. His scarred features and battle-worn appearance typically struck fear into subordinates across 3 star systems. Commander Vec, explain why my reconnaissance forces are requesting permission to invite their human targets to military planning sessions. Sir, the humans appear to possess social manipulation abilities that exceed our intelligence estimates by several orders of magnitude. Social manipulation? My reports suggest they're teaching our soldiers to sing recreational songs. Yes, sir. Private Pex has learned something called Kumbaya, and is apparently teaching it to his squadmates during off-duty hours. General Krath's expression cycled through disbelief, confusion, and what might have been the early stages of a nervous breakdown. Continue your assessment, Commander. I need to understand whether we're facing a military threat or whatever this island. The transmission ended, leaving Vec alone with his disintegrating command structure and growing suspicion that military training had not prepared him for this scenario. Sir, came another voice from the perimeter guard station. We have a new development. Jade has organized what she calls a talent show, where soldiers are volunteering to demonstrate their individual skills for group entertainment. Our soldiers are volunteering to perform for recreational purposes? Yes, sir. Sergeant Thane just finished a demonstration of advanced knife techniques, but instead of presenting it as combat training, he framed it as artistic expression, and thanked everyone for being such a wonderful audience. Vec's claws extended and retracted in rapid succession. Sergeant Thane had just transformed weapons training into performance art, and somehow this seemed perfectly reasonable to everyone involved except the commanding officer. What's next on the agenda? He asked weakly. Private Zoll is apparently going to teach everyone a traditional Keltharian hunting song, but he's modified the lyrics to be about friendship and cooperation instead of death and conquest. He modified a war chant into a friendship anthem. Yes, sir. Jade suggested that music should bring people together rather than intimidate enemies, and he found the concept inspiring. Through the audio feed, they could hear Private Zoll's booming voice leading a chorus that included human and Keltharian voices, blending in harmonies that should have been impossible given their different vocal structures. The modified war chant had become something that actually sounded pleasant. Sir, Lieutenant Rix observed quietly, they're not just cooperating with the human. They're teaching her our cultural traditions while adapting them to her social preferences. Cultural exchange, Vex said numbly. My reconnaissance unit is conducting unauthorized cultural exchange with their surveillance target. And they all seem to be enjoying it. Sir. That was the part that defied every training manual in existence. His soldiers weren't being coerced or manipulated into compliance. They were genuinely happy about abandoning military protocol in favor of activities that brought them satisfaction and social connection. Sir. Incoming transmission from the Strategic Analysis Division, the communication operator announced. Dr. Wex wants to discuss preliminary findings about human social architecture. Dr. Wex materialized on screen, her academic robes somewhat disheveled, and her usually precise demeanor showing signs of intellectual distress. Commander, my research team has been analyzing reports from all affected units. We need to discuss our fundamental misconceptions about human pack dynamics. Go ahead, Doctor. Our intelligence suggested that humans would disrupt Keltharian pack structures through individualistic behavior that undermines group cohesion. This prediction was completely wrong. Wrong how? Humans don't break pack structures, Commander. They optimize them. They identify inefficiencies in social organization and instinctively modify group dynamics to increase cooperation, satisfaction, and collective effectiveness. Vex stared at the academic whose entire career had been built on understanding interspecies social behavior. You're saying they're natural pack improvement specialists? I'm saying they've evolved social capabilities that automatically enhance any group they encounter. Instead of competing within existing hierarchies, they create new social frameworks that benefit everyone simultaneously. That's impossible. Social structures can't be improved. They exist because they represent optimal survival strategies. Commander, your soldiers are currently more cohesive, more cooperative, and more invested in group success than they've ever been. Jade Morrison has enhanced your unit's effectiveness while maintaining individual satisfaction levels that exceed anything we've recorded. Through their screens, Vec watched his soldiers cleaning up after the talent show with the same enthusiasm they brought to everything else since Jade's arrival. But instead of grudging compliance with cleanup duties, they were competing to be most helpful while engaging in cheerful conversation about tomorrow's activities. What does this mean for our military objectives? Vec asked. It means that humans represent the opposite of everything we predicted. Instead of weakening pack structures through individualism, they strengthen social bonds through inclusivity, mutual respect, and shared positive experiences. Commander, they're the most dangerous opponents we could possibly face, because they win conflicts by making their enemies want to become their friends. The implications hit Vec like a kinetic projectile to the brainstem. If humans could transform military units into cooperative social groups within hours of contact, traditional conquest strategies would be completely ineffective. How do you defeat an enemy who responds to aggression by offering friendship, shared meals, and talent shows? Sir, Lieutenant Rix added, there's something else. Jade has been asking about our homeworld, our families, our personal interests. She remembers details about each soldier's individual circumstances and asks follow-up questions during subsequent conversations. She's creating personal relationships with each pack member, simultaneously. Yes, sir. And she seems to genuinely care about their answers. Private Rex mentioned that his offspring was having difficulties with advanced mathematics, and she spent an hour explaining human, educational techniques that might help. She's providing family counseling services to our reconnaissance personnel, and Private Rex is incredibly grateful for the assistance, sir. He's already planning to implement her suggestions when he returns home. Vec looked at his transformed command post, where relaxed soldiers were discussing tomorrow's activities with the same enthusiasm typically reserved for successful combat operations. The rigid military structure that had defined their mission was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like a community of friends working together toward shared goals. Sir, General Krath is requesting another status update, the communication operator announced. Vec accepted the transmission, and General Krath's battle-scarred visage appeared on screen again. Commander, what's your tactical assessment of the human threat level? Vec looked at his screens, showing impossible scenes of interspecies harmony. Listened to the sounds of soldiers who were happier than they'd ever been, while maintaining higher effectiveness levels than any military manual had predicted. Sir, the humans aren't trying to break our packs, he said slowly. They're showing us what functional social structures actually look like. Explain. We've been organizing our forces around dominance hierarchies and rigid obedience structures because we assumed that was the most efficient system. But Jade Morrison has demonstrated that voluntary cooperation based on mutual respect and shared positive experiences produces better results in every measurable category. General Krath's expression showed the same confusion that Vec had been experiencing all day. You're suggesting that human social organization is superior to ours? I'm suggesting that they've evolved past the need for dominance-based pack structures, sir. They've developed social technologies that turn potential conflicts into collaborative relationships. And you recommend? Vec looked once more at his soldiers, who were now planning tomorrow's activities with Jade, as if she had always been part of their unit. They were more cohesive, more effective, and more satisfied than any military formation he had ever commanded. I recommend we stop trying to analyze human capabilities and start asking them to teach us how they work, he said finally. General Krath was quiet for a long moment. Commander, I'm authorizing a complete revision of our contact protocols. If humans can improve military effectiveness through friendship, we need to understand how. The transmission ended, and Vec looked at Lieutenant Rix. Think she'd be willing to conduct a seminar for other units? Sir, given everything we've observed about her behavior, she'd probably be delighted to help. Sir! The communication operator's voice interrupted their conversation with urgent intensity. Priority transmission from Fleet Admiral Grix. He's requesting immediate conference with all affected unit commanders. The holographic display activated, revealing not just Fleet Admiral Grix, but a conference room filled with Keltharian military leadership from across 7 star systems. Their expressions ranged from confusion to panic to what might have been existential terror. Commanders, Admiral Grix began without preamble. We have a situation that requires immediate strategic reassessment. In the past 18 hours, 47 reconnaissance units have reported identical behavioral modifications in their personnel following human contact. 47 units? Vec repeated weakly. Across 12 different sectors, Commander. The phenomenon is universal. Every military formation exposed to human social dynamics has experienced what can only be described as voluntary organizational restructuring. Commander Yix from Sector 12 appeared on a secondary screen, her usually immaculate uniform rumpled and her ears drooping with exhaustion. Admiral, my unit has abandoned standard patrol, rotations in favor of what the human calls buddy system partnerships. Soldiers are voluntarily pairing up for mutual support and protection. And the effectiveness ratings? Admiral Grix inquired. Improved by 37%. Sir, response times are faster, communication is clearer, and morale indicators have exceeded measurement parameters. Commander Rex, from Sector 7. Admiral Grix continued. Report your status. Commander Rex looked like he hadn't slept in days. Sir, our human contact organized what she calls conflict resolution workshops, where soldiers practice negotiating disagreements through discussion rather than dominance displays. We've had 0 disciplinary incidents in 26 hours. Previously, Your unit averaged 14 disciplinary actions per day. Yes, sir. The human explained that most conflicts arise from miscommunication and competing needs rather than genuine hostility. She taught our soldiers to identify underlying concerns and work collaboratively toward solutions that benefit everyone. Admiral Grix turned to another screen. Ho. Commander Hex, Sector 4. Sir. The human in our sector has introduced something called appreciation circles, where soldiers take turns expressing gratitude for their teammates' contributions. It sounds ridiculous, but unit cohesion has increased by factors we didn't know were mathematically possible. Explain. Soldiers who previously barely tolerated each other are now actively seeking opportunities to support and assist their colleagues. They're sharing personal equipment, volunteering for each other's duties, and collaborating on projects that exceed their assigned responsibilities. Vec listened to report after report of impossible transformations. Humans weren't just affecting individual units. They were systematically revolutionizing Keltharian military culture through activities that sounded like civilian recreation programs. Admiral. Dr. Wex's voice joined the conference. My research team has identified the core mechanism behind these transformations. Proceed. Doctor. Humans appear to possess an intuitive understanding of social optimization that operates below conscious awareness. They automatically identify inefficiencies in group dynamics and implement modifications that enhance collective functionality while maintaining individual satisfaction. In practical terms, they make everyone happier while making the group more effective. It's not conscious manipulation, it's evolutionary social architecture. Commander Zex from Sector 9 joined the discussion. Admiral, there's something else. The human assigned to our unit has been teaching soldiers about their home planet's approach to resource distribution. She calls it economic cooperation rather than resource competition. Meaning, instead of competing for limited supplies, soldiers are pooling resources and distributing them based on need rather than rank. Efficiency has improved dramatically because waste has been eliminated. Your soldiers are practicing voluntary resource redistribution? Yes, sir. And they prefer it to our traditional allocation system because it reduces stress and increases group security. Admiral Grix looked around the conference room filled with military officers describing scenarios that violated everything they understood about organizational psychology. Gentlemen, we appear to be facing a species whose social evolution has progressed beyond the competitive frameworks that define our civilization. Sir, Vec interjected, there's more. Our human has begun teaching soldiers about conflict prevention through what she calls emotional intelligence. They're learning to identify and address social tensions before they escalate into disciplinary phase issues. She's teaching emotional regulation techniques to combat soldiers? Yes, sir. And it works. Private Tex, who previously had anger management issues that resulted in frequent altercations, hasn't had a single aggressive incident since learning what Jade calls breathing exercises and perspective taking. Commander Yix added, our human introduced team-building exercises that seem designed to help soldiers understand each other's strengths and preferences. They're now naturally organizing themselves into optimal work groups without requiring orders. Self-organizing tactical units, Admiral Grix mused. Based on individual capabilities and interpersonal compatibility, rather than arbitrary hierarchical assignments. The effectiveness improvements are unprecedented, sir, Commander Rex confirmed. When soldiers choose their own partners and responsibilities based on mutual understanding and complementary skills, performance levels increase exponentially. Doctor. Wex's voice carried scientific excitement that bordered on mania. Admiral. We're witnessing the practical application of advanced social technologies that our species hasn't developed. Humans have evolved collaborative frameworks that eliminate most sources of interpersonal conflict while enhancing group productivity. What are the strategic implications? If we attempted to conquer human territories using traditional military approaches, we would likely find our own forces converting to their social systems voluntarily. They don't defeat enemies through superior firepower. They defeat enemies by demonstrating superior quality of life. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. An enemy that fought wars by making their opponents' lives better was not something military doctrine had prepared them to address. Furthermore, Dr. Wex continued, preliminary analysis suggests that human social structures could be adapted to improve Keltharian civilian populations. Their approaches to education, resource distribution, and conflict resolution could revolutionize our entire civilization. You're recommending that we adopt human social technologies? I'm recommending that we acknowledge their superior effectiveness and learn from them rather than attempting to impose our inferior systems through force. Admiral Grix looked around at his commanders, all of whom were describing military units that had become more effective, more satisfied, and more cohesive under human influence. Commanders, I'm authorizing a complete strategic revision. Instead of reconnaissance and potential conquest, your new mission is cultural exchange and educational collaboration. 2000. Endement. Sir? Vec asked. Learn everything you can about human social organization. Document their techniques, understand their principles, and prepare comprehensive reports for implementation across our military structure. We're changing from invasion planning to social studies? We're changing from conquest to cooperation, Commander. Because apparently, the humans have already won this conflict by making us want to be better than we were. Through the evening air, they could hear Jade's voice organizing bedtime routines with the same patient efficiency she brought to everything else, while soldiers who should have been maintaining guard rotations were instead ensuring her comfort and safety through acts of voluntary kindness. Lieutenant, Vec said quietly, I think we've just been outmaneuvered by a species that fights wars by making everyone want to be on the same side. Sir, should we consider that a victory or a defeat? Vec watched Jade say goodnight to each soldier individually, expressing gratitude for their contributions and genuine care for their well-being, while they responded with levels of respect and affection that exceeded anything their military hierarchy had ever generated. I think, Lieutenant, that we've just learned what winning actually looks like.